A silent legal battle just reached a definitive conclusion, and it is poised to fundamentally alter the architecture of our urban transport networks. The Competition and Consumer Commission, or the CAC, recently handed down a ruling that has sent shockwaves through the corridors of corporate boardrooms and union headquarters alike. For years, the transport industry has operated under a fragile equilibrium, balanced on the thin edge of labor flexibility and corporate profitability. This new ruling shatters that status quo by tightening the definitions surrounding gig work integration and collective bargaining leverage. While the public might see this as a dry regulatory shift buried in legal jargon, the reality is far more volatile. This decision effectively ends the era of low-cost, high-flexibility labor that corporate giants have relied upon to keep fares artificially low. As the dust settles, the implications for your daily commute are massive. We are entering a period of profound uncertainty, where the traditional mechanisms of public transit are being challenged at their very core by judicial intervention. To understand the gravity of this situation, we must peel back the layers of the CAC ruling itself. At its heart, the decision addresses the misclassification of transport workers, a long-standing issue that has fueled grievances across the industrial landscape. For decades, companies have argued that these workers operate as independent contractors, shielding the firms from the overhead costs of insurance, pensions, and collective wage increases. The CAC has now effectively stripped away this legal armor. By mandating a reclassification that acknowledges the reality of these service roles, the ruling forces corporations to absorb significant financial burdens that were previously offloaded onto the employees. This is not merely an administrative correction. It is a structural redesign of the industry's economic engine. Corporations are now scrambling to adjust their balance sheets, while labor unions are preparing for an unprecedented wave of contract negotiations. The sheer scale of this regulatory pivot is creating a ripple effect that will inevitably bleed into how your morning commute is priced and managed. With the legal backing of the CAC, labor unions have found themselves in the strongest position they have occupied in over a generation. For years, these organizations have struggled to gain traction in an environment designed to atomize their workforce and prevent solidarity. This ruling provides the legal framework necessary to consolidate influence, giving unions the teeth they need to force corporate giants to the table. We are witnessing a strategic pivot. Unions are no longer just fighting for incremental wage increases. They are challenging the entire operational methodology of the transport giants. The rhetoric coming from union leaders has shifted from reactive defense to proactive demand, centered on long-term job security and health benefits. This newfound leverage is not being ignored. Throughout our urban centers, picket line preparations are underway, and internal strategy sessions are intensifying. The power dynamic has shifted, and the corporations that once dictated terms without opposition are now facing a unified front that is demanding a fundamental restructuring of the employer-employee relationship. The corporate sector is not sitting idly by as their business models are dismantled. Major transit providers and gig-based transport firms are already preparing to challenge the CAC ruling through long, protracted appeals, signaling that this fight will be played out in the courts for months, perhaps years to come. Their primary argument rests on the claim that increased labor costs will inevitably trigger a rise in consumer pricing, potentially pricing low-income riders out of the market entirely. By framing themselves as the defenders of affordability, these corporations are attempting to turn public opinion against the unions. Behind the scenes, they are also exploring technological workarounds, including accelerated automation and the deployment of autonomous vehicles to replace human-driven transport services. This is a high-stakes power struggle, where the weapon of choice is the price of a ticket. As the industry faces these mounting pressures, the public remains caught in the middle of a tug-of-war between corporate interests and the demand for fair, dignified labor practices. The potential for industrial action looms large over the current landscape, threatening to paralyze the daily rhythms of our city lives. If negotiations between unions and corporate entities reach a stalemate, which many analysts believe is increasingly likely, the result will be widespread strikes and service interruptions that could last for days or even weeks. This is not just about stalled buses or missing trains. It is about the fragility of our public infrastructure. In cities where transit is the lifeblood of economic activity, any disruption triggers a cascading failure that affects small businesses, service workers, and the general public. We are looking at a scenario where the sheer scale of the labor disagreement could lead to total system failure. The CAC ruling, intended to bring clarity and fairness, has paradoxically pushed the industry toward a dangerous precipice. As residents, we must prepare for the possibility that our standard modes of movement will be fundamentally challenged by this clash of titans. The economic ripple effects of the CAC ruling are arguably the most immediate concern for the average commuter. When transport firms are forced to reclassify thousands of workers, the additional costs associated with benefits and insurance must be accounted for somewhere in the budget. Historically, these costs are passed directly to the consumer in the form of higher fares. This creates inflationary pressure that extends beyond the transport sector, as transport costs are a fundamental component of the price index for goods and services across the economy. While the goal is to lift the standard of living for the workforce, the immediate economic reality is that the cost of participation in the workforce is rising. We are seeing a complex interplay where the pursuit of social justice within the labor market is creating tangible economic hurdles for the people the ruling was meant to protect. It is a classic economic paradox that forces us to question the true cost of our convenience-driven society. The impact of this showdown is being felt most intensely in the dense urban centers, where transit systems are not merely options, but essential lifelines. In these metropolises, the concentration of both union membership and corporate transit headquarters creates a perfect storm for localized conflict. The city is essentially becoming a laboratory for this high-stakes struggle. When public transit falters, the entire structure of urban life begins to fray. Businesses lose revenue as customers cannot arrive, and the economic heartbeat of the city slows to a crawl. The CAC ruling has essentially turned our urban landscape into a primary battleground for industrial rights, shifting the focus from public convenience to private interest. As these cities continue to navigate the aftermath of the ruling, the urban planning challenges grow exponentially. We are witnessing the strain of modern society attempting to reconcile corporate power with labor necessity, all while the physical city tries to keep functioning amidst the chaos and the uncertainty of the pending legal and industrial confrontations. So, where does this leave us? The CAC ruling has opened a Pandora's box of legal challenges, labor unrest, and economic shifts that will define the transport sector for the next decade. There is no simple solution, as the competing needs of workers for fair pay and corporations for stability remain fundamentally misaligned. As we watch these developments unfold, it is clear that the status quo is permanently broken. We are headed toward a new model of transit management that will require compromises from all sides, a model that likely involves higher costs, but perhaps more sustainable labor practices. The journey ahead will be bumpy, characterized by strikes, court battles, and shifting fares. As commuters, our role is to remain informed and vigilant, recognizing that every trip we take is now part of a larger, ongoing struggle. The silent verdict of the CAC has spoken, but the final chapter of this conflict is currently being written on our city streets every single day.